Subconscious mind mastery, 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 mastery.
Welcome to the Subconscious Mind Mastery Podcast. I'm Thomas Miller. You just heard the beautiful voice of Michele Blood with what is going to be a new podcast open. And if you check out the Subconscious Mind Mastery YouTube channel, you'll also see an old familiar logo, but in a new animation. I'm excited to enter 2025, and in this episode, you're going to hear some of the goals for the coming year. But Michele Blood is on quite a journey herself, and she worked with Bob Proctor doing events around the world back in the day, as you'll hear, and she has his passion and thrust for taking on lots of new projects. That was one of Bob Proctor's signatures, and boy, she caught the bug, so to speak. So Michele and I have been talking about collaborating on something for about a year now. And this is part of the launch of some of these collaborations, having her on here more regularly. So I'm excited for the future. And to set all of this up, we're going to talk to Michele about her story first. This will be 2 parts. And then we'll dive into some of her thoughts on the subconscious mind and how to reprogram it. So with all of that said, Michele, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, my dear friend Thomas. Lovely to be here. Together.
We've been threatening to do something together, and here it is. This is it. So one of the things that I wanted to do was take this into some new territory, and one of these is video. So if you're used to listening to this on audio, you're going to have another option, and that is on YouTube, on Subconscious Mind Mastery. And Subconscious Mind Mastery may get a little bit rebranded on the YouTube side. We'll see. And if anything changes, the link to this video will be in the audio show notes, if that makes sense. So just dig into the show notes. It'll be right there at the top, and you can click to the video. But that's one thing that we're going to be doing different. And then just some different conversations. And I am really looking forward to some of sharing what Michele is up to in the world, because she is on a really high vibe spiritual path. And Michele, that's one of the things that I'm kind of adopting is high vibe in 25. What do you think?
Oh, I love it. Definitely. 24/7, high vibe, 25.
And then, everybody picks a word for the year. And it just came very clearly in December. The word for me for this coming year of 2025 is authenticity. And I thought, just a little cousin to that would be integrity. But there is a difference, the difference with authenticity being just real. And then integrity, of course, is delivering on what you say. So I'll be pairing those two up, but that's kind of what I'm thinking is high vibe in 25 and make it authentic and just make it real.
Beautiful.
That was one of the things I wanted to ask you. And since you've been here in previous podcasts, and I just thought maybe let's bring your story forward so that we kind of start clean and fresh here. So why don't you take us back to how you got to where you are today?
Okay, well, I'll just do this very briefly so that we can get into the depth of what it's all about, Alfie.
Good. Nice.
And
I like it.
Again, Thomas, the first podcast I did with you was so extraordinary. I think that was in 2019 or 2020. And I just loved your vibration straight from the start and what you were doing, obviously. Because when people are authentic and they come from, being like that, you don't even think of the word, I've got to be authentic, because when people are naturally honest and come from a place of being real, it doesn't come into your consciousness at all that you even have to think that way. And that's the vibration I got immediately doing our first interview, because Subconscious Mind Mastery, of course, is a brilliant name, and it goes into so many different areas of life to show people that everything is possible for you. Just everything, people. And so I just want to thank Thomas again. He's been doing his show since 2013, way ahead of his time, doing that on a podcast. And so I just thank all of your listeners who love you like I do, maybe not as much as I do.
Oh,
So I don't think that's possible. And it's funny because if you saw us in person, he's like 7'8" and I'm like 2 foot.
We don't
The
have an
short,
age gap. We have a height gap,
the
right?
height gap, the short and the tall of it. No, I'm 5 foot, and you're what, 6 foot?
6'3". Yeah.
6'3". Wow.
Yeah.
Well, someone who's 5 foot, 6'3"
Yard and a
is like
half difference.
7'8" to me,
Yeah.
even with high shoes on.
Like a monster. Tony Robbins walked in the room.
Tall drinks of water are always welcome.
Tall drinks of water. Yes. Definitely got one of those.
And the joy as well. And I just found a beautiful connection with us that had that joy and that love of compassion and uplifting people so that they can understand the power that you have. So, sharing my story very briefly, I was a rock singer in Australia, ended up quite successful, was on television since the age of 5.
Wow.
So I was in the entertainment industry for years. At one stage, my band toured nonstop for 7 years. And, you know, it's really, really good discipline for the spiritual path being in a rock band. People say, huh? Okay. How so? Well, you have to be in harmony together. First of all, not just the instrumentation and the voices, but you have to connect with the right sort of people. And I say to people, if you want to have a successful business, treat it like a successful rock band and you'll never fail.
Wow. That's interesting. I love that.
Yeah, because, if you hear something out of harmony, even if you think you're tone deaf, nobody is really. I've never met anyone who's actually tone deaf. Maybe when they hear themselves singing.
I was going to say, let me just introduce you to somebody who is tone deaf. I tried to take some music lessons when I was in Dallas. Oh, this was 10 years ago. And the guy was an opera singer. And I heard these amazing sounds coming from down the hall in the building we were in. And I said, do you do lessons? Yes. After 6 months of working with this opera singer, he was still pounding on his electric keyboard, going da da da, going up and down. He's like, and I said, Damon, we've been doing this for 6 months. We're not going to get there. I can talk, but I can't sing.
If anyone's heard any of the audio programs I used to do with Bob Proctor, and he sings some of my songs during his talks.
Oh, wow.
At first I thought he was just doing it to make me laugh so much and nearly wet my pants. The engineer and I in the sound studio were just like, are you serious? And he said, yeah, because if we can get them to life. And I said, no, are you seriously? That's how you sing. He went, well, yeah.
See? And he did just fine.
And everybody loves those sections in the program.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So,
well, okay, maybe you'll get me to try it one day, but it'll have to be in a special program, and it'll have to be a for sale program, because I'm not going to do it for free.
But seriously, the engineer said, I've got to go to the toilet.
This is great. Okay, so you were a rock singer. Back to that.
Okay, so at one stage we toured nonstop for 7 years. And as I was saying before, to be successful in a rock band, particularly a really rough place like Australian Aussie drunk audiences, it wasn't until we got really big audiences that you're safe from beer cans. You have to be really tough to be the lead singer and the manager of the band. So one day we were coming home from Brisbane to Sydney, which is like a 14-hour drive. I was with the truck driver. He fell asleep at the wheel, went into a telephone pole, and as the passenger, all the instrumentation and heavy speaker boxes went into me. And remember, we had big double four-ways because we had to have hire our own sound equipment. In those days, hire your own truck driver to get to each big venue. And it was pretty bad. So I was in the hospital for many, many, many months, long operations. And I started doing affirmations after listening to Napoleon Hill's audiobook about his Think and Grow Rich, about his little son being born deaf and doing auto suggestion to have his little boy to hear again, which we now call affirmations. And he said, like, it's a positive statement you say to yourself about yourself, must be stated in the now and emotionalized. But Thomas, you know what I mean. You speak to a lot of people as well, and you've been through your own things in your life, as we all have. So when you're in an emotional, whether it's from depression or you've lost a loved one or family are being weird or you're in physical pain like I was, it's very, very challenging to emotionalize something because I'm saying, I am healed. I know I am. I love myself. I am my friend. That was the perfect affirmation that I wrote, but none of it was real. So it didn't work, just speaking it. So I had an epiphany about 3 weeks later. You can't get a song out of your head. I'd even written jingles over the years. So I started singing, I am healed, I know I am. I love myself, I am my friend. As the
Wow.
healing light of the universe surrounds me and goes through me, I know that I am healed. I sang it over and over again. To make a very long story short and petite, sweet like me, I went on to have miraculous healing, went into the studio with my friend John Beatty. We ended up writing and recording tons and tons of affirmation songs, and with no intention of selling them, just for our own consciousness, because I realized how quickly it worked. Because the lyrics, the affirmations go into the left side of the brain, the music, even when it's just a cappella, the right side of the brain, the melody. So it goes into your subconscious mind, which is proven now 300 times faster than any other method of affirmation power. So that's how that began. I ended up touring with 𝗙𝗢𝗥𝗡, Wayne Dyer, Stuart Wilde, Tony Alessandra, Louise Hay, Bob Proctor, tons of other people. And because they loved me singing the affirmations in between these promoters, in between these speakers. So eventually I ended up speaking. Bob Proctor and his wife loved what I did so much. They didn't want to ever do an event without me because I would get like keyboard player and dancers and make the events. The first one I did for Bob was a huge event in Kuala Lumpur. So that's how I started working all over the globe, working with Bob for many, many years, the great and late, but never late, Bob Proctor. I was starting to, my oscillation and my vibration, my frequency was becoming so fast that I was feeling like a heart glow. And you know what I mean, Thomas, by heart glow?
Yeah, but how did it feel?
Well, it felt like my heart was actually out of my chest that far and that it was glowing.
Wow.
You know, I couldn't see that it was glowing, but I could feel the vibration of it glowing. And
Mm.
I was backstage with Bob and we were getting ready to do something with the Malaysia Airlines people we were training and uh and he said, "You're crying. What is it?" And I said, "I am in absolute bliss. I've got this heart glow. And I don't really care about doing all these big events anymore. I just want to find out what that is." And he said, "You're looking for enlightenment, an enlightened teacher." And I'd read Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, Swami Muktananda's book, about consciousness, play of consciousness from, these autobiographies from these great enlightened beings. So I knew it was possible, but these people had left the body. And he said, "Go and find an enlightened teacher and just stop this if you want to." And it took me 14 years to find an enlightened teacher. Her name is Kundalini.
Now,
She
14 years you
Yeah,
searched for this.
Japan 23 times, India, all over Asia, thinking, of course, an enlightened teacher has to be bald and Asian or Indian with long gray hair and a long gray beard and really old, very wise.
Can
And
I
so
ask
that's
you a
what I
question about that?
Yes.
And but don't get derailed from your story because this is fascinating. What were your criteria of scratching them off the list?
Well, in Japan, it would be they don't speak English, number one, and they wouldn't accept a female student because a lot of the Zen masters, and I didn't feel any connection to them. And I knew that there was an enlightened teacher out there that I would feel a love connection with
Mm.
and feel respect and and so I would cross them off the list if I didn't feel any connection. And because I didn't know what it felt like to be in front of an enlightened being, I didn't know if they were enlightened or not, just what people had told me. And so I did have a couple of deep spiritual experiences when I was in the jungle of Kuala Lumpur, seeing a spiritual being talk to me, but telepathically, about, don't worry about staying in Asia, because I wasn't happy living there anymore. So I ended up going to America, because Bob Proctor used to fly me out to America when he was doing gigs in America, seminars. Everything's a gig to me.
Yeah.
And I decided to live there, even though no one knew of me. And I thought, this is going to be a great way for me to start off with not knowing anybody. And I always loved challenging myself, which is crazy when you think about when you've already got everything going on. But I love to do that, because it really, when you stretch yourself, you grow. And the more I stretch myself, and the more I would do something that I was never fearful of much, though, which is really weird, that I never had much fear in my life. So I would just go and do stuff, And it was tough, and it took me a while I ended up getting an O1 so I could stay in the country, because I was told a couple of lawyers said, "Oh, you'd have to marry someone." I said, "Never." And so then I just prayed, and I just said, "I want to find a lawyer who can help me." And a big record producer who's a really good mate of mine, Chris from MCI Records in Australia, called me and he said, "Hey, I'm in LA, let's meet up." And he said, "Oh, I've got Aaron Price. He is a great lawyer. He works with entertainers." And within a week, I had an O1 visa for outstanding
Wow.
achievement work permit. And I didn't have to marry anyone, didn't have to do this, didn't have to do that. Now I've got dual citizenship. So it's pretty cool. Australia and America, in case people didn't know.
That's amazing.
But anyway, after being in America for a few years, I met someone called Johnny Indara, who had an enlightened teacher who was an American, but he'd left the body, and he'd heard down the grapevine that one of his many students had become enlightened, just one out of all his thousands, because it's a rare thing to happen. And I ended up meeting her, Thomas, Balboa Park, tiny little section of a museum in Balboa Park in San Diego. And she's just sitting on a little stage, which was just about this high, on a chair, just two lights next to her. And I started tearing up, and I started feeling tingles at the top of my head. And when she went like that, I saw light coming out, but she was so irreverent. And, an American girl that's like 10 years younger than me at least,
Mm.
if she hears me now, she'll probably say, "Maybe more, Michele." And so she finally agreed to teach me, and she's definitely enlightened. And that's how I got on the path to get off the grid. I went off all social media, didn't do gigs, didn't do events, and just studied with her for 10 years.
Wow.
And had a spiritual awakening during my time with her. So that's it. And I feel that my life began then.
So 25 years basically of searching and studying to get to that point.
Well, 14 years till I found her, and then
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So tell me about enlightenment.
Well, it's absolutely fascinating. It's so challenging to explain it, and I know I've attempted to with you guys before, but it's something you go through this metamorphosis for years and years of meditating, and when you have an enlightened teacher, they can transmit light through their consciousness, because they're a conduit. They're not. Some people that have had Kundalini surges think they've had an awakening, but they just had a surge, and then it's on again. Then it's off again, maybe 2 weeks later. Where did that Kundalini rush go? People freaking out. And so when you have an enlightened teacher and you actually do the work, you do the meditation, you're willing to give up your ego and people knowing who you are and money or anything, because you're really sincere, and you don't have to give up money. It's just that any obstacle that I thought was going to challenge me to be enlightened. I mean, I would sit with a bucket of ice water next to me during meditation at night. We didn't have an ashram. We just lived in our own homes, but we would travel to different countries and have events and meditate with all her students, Egypt and Bhutan, all these wonderful places. And so after many surges of Kundalini rushing up and light everywhere, I started having what I call Stargate experiences, where I would go through, I'd hear this huge buzzing in my head the first time it happened. You're not thinking at the time, wow, what's that? Because you're not thinking, because you can't go into a samadhi or a Stargate with thought. You have to stop thought. Thought has to be stopped. And all those years of training assist you to be able to stop thought when you're meditating. And so the first time, like a buzzing, rushing, roaring sound, and I am flying, and I knew it was afterwards, it was faster than the speed of light through this tunnel of light. Like people talk about a near-death experience, but this is what people have when they have a near-death experience, but it stops before they get out the other end of that Stargate. But with me, I kept going. And then the first time I was like in a universe, in like eternity, like aurora, like lights and stars, and I don't know what it was. And then I started going through another Stargate, and I didn't realize at the time you're going into a higher and higher infinite dimension, until I realized I could see 360 degrees around me. And the minute the thought came, oh my God, I can see it right around me, zoom, I came straight back into my body. And so
Wow.
this happened for a couple of months, until one day I went through the Stargate, and then everything just went shoo, and turned to gold. Everything. I was completely gone. And that means that your heart chakra, your crown chakra has been activated, because they all have to be activated. And that was it for me. I was done. I was gone. I was enlightened. And it was the most incredible experience. The first few weeks, my senses were so profound. If a bus backfired, I was gonna have a heart attack, Thomas. It was like, shit. What in the F is that? Obviously, you don't become saintly just because you're enlightened. And you realize that there is no sin and there is no fear. You don't think about the past anymore. You don't project into the future. And the love that you feel for everything and everyone. However, Thomas, you can see people. You can bear witness to who they are, their actual soul, and what they've been through, without one iota of negative judgment. You never judge again. You just see who people are, and it's God through you. It's not anymore you there anymore. It is just wow. And the fact that I love to share this is because a girl that left school when she was 15 because she wanted to be a rock singer from Australia, if I can become awakened, anybody can. That's what I reckon.
Well, that's what I want to dig into, and let's go to a part 2 on this, because I
Okay.
have so many other questions about the process, working with a guru, how it compares to salvation. There's just a whole lot that I want to unpack staying on this topic. So let's just pause here, because we've run about the normal length of these podcasts, and we'll pick this up right here in part 2. Thank you so much, Michele. This has been amazing again.
Thank you, Tommy boy.
La, 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 we'll see you next time. She's going, ah.